The Two Towers begins with a fall that should have ended everything. Gandalf the Grey plunges into darkness while fighting the Balrog, and for a long stretch it feels like hope itself has vanished with him. The Fellowship is broken, the ring is still moving toward Mordor, and every road across Middle-earth now leads through fear, loss, and war. This chapter is about what happens after the grand quest shatters. The heroes are scattered, the enemy is stronger than ever, and survival depends on whether courage can hold when no one knows if victory is even possible. The story opens with Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee continuing their journey toward Mordor alone. They are trying to follow a path that almost no one would choose willingly because every step takes them closer to the center of darkness. The burden on Frodo is already getting worse. The ring is becoming heavier in a way that is not physical. It drags on his thoughts, clouds his judgment, and isolates him even from Sam, who loves him more faithfully than anyone else in the world. Before long, they realize they are being followed. The creature stalking them is Gollum, once a being much like a hobbit, now twisted by centuries of obsession with the ring. He wants it back with every ruined part of himself. Frodo and Sam capture him, and Sam wants to treat him like a threat that can never be trusted. Frodo sees something more complicated. He sees a warning. Gollum is what the ring can turn a soul into over time, and because of that, Frodo chooses pity instead of immediate destruction. Gollum offers to guide them into Mordor. Sam hates the idea, but they have almost no other choice. The Black Gate is too heavily guarded, and the world ahead is too dangerous to cross without someone who knows its hidden paths. So the three of them move forward together in one of the strangest alliances in the story. Frodo pities Gollum. Sam distrusts him. Gollum serves them only because he still thinks there might be a way to reclaim what he calls his precious. At the same time, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are racing across the plains in pursuit of the Uruk-hai who captured Merry and Pippin. They have already lost Boromir, the Fellowship is broken, and every hour matters. Their chase leads them into the land of Rohan, a kingdom that should be strong but is slowly being poisoned from within. Before they reach its heart, they encounter a miracle. Gandalf returns to them, no longer the gray wanderer they knew, but transformed into Gandalf the White. He survived the fall, defeated the Balrog, and has been sent back changed and greater than before. His return is one of the first true sparks of hope in the film. The world is growing darker, but it is not abandoned. Gandalf then leads Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli to the court of King Theoden of Rohan. What they find there is not a ruler in command of his people, but an old man hollowed out by grief and manipulation. Theoden has been spiritually trapped by the influence of Saruman through his servant Grima Wormtongue. Grima whispers fear into the king's ear, isolates him from the truth, and slowly turns the court into a place of paralysis. Gandalf breaks that grip and calls Theoden back to himself. It is not just the freeing of one old king. It is the awakening of an entire nation that has been sleepwalking toward ruin. Theoden comes back into his full mind and immediately sees how much damage has already been done. His son is dead. His people are vulnerable. War is no longer approaching. It has arrived. Saruman, meanwhile, is not waiting. From the Tower of Isengard, he is building an army of Uruk-hai bred for brutal war. He has given himself fully to the idea that the future belongs to iron, fire, and domination. Forests are destroyed to fuel his industry, and he prepares to crush Rohan in a single overwhelming strike. He sees men as weak, divided, and easy to break. Merry and Pippin escape from the Uruk-hai through a mixture of luck, courage, and the sudden attack of the riders of Rohan. Fleeing into Fangorn Forest, they meet Treebeard, one of the Ents, an ancient shepherd of the trees. At first, Treebeard does not want to involve himself in the wars of men, wizards, and dark lords. The Ents move slowly, think deeply, and avoid quick decisions. But Merry and Pippin know that neutrality is becoming impossible. The world is changing too violently for old powers to keep standing aside. Back with Frodo and Sam, the journey with Gollum becomes stranger and more intimate. Frodo begins to understand that Gollum contains two minds in one broken body. One is sly, hateful, and hungry for the ring. The other remembers faintly what it meant to be something gentler. Frodo speaks to that part, and for a time it seems like pity might actually bring out something like healing. Sam remains wary because he sees more clearly than Frodo that Gollum's hunger has never gone away. The three travelers are captured by rangers of Gondor led by Faramir. the brother of Boromir. This meeting matters because it tests whether the corruption that touched Boromir will repeat itself in his brother. Faramir learns quickly that Frodo carries something of enormous power, and at first he seems ready to take it to Gondor as a weapon against Sauron. That is exactly the kind of thinking the ring feeds on. It always offers power in the language of necessity. But Faramir is not Boromir. He is tempted, but he is not consumed. He sees enough of Frodo's suffering to understand that this burden cannot be used without becoming poison. In the end, he lets Frodo and Sam go. It is one of the quiet but crucial moral victories in the story, because it proves the world is not doomed to repeat every weakness that has already appeared. Meanwhile, the crisis in Rohan deepens. Theoden decides he cannot defend the open land against Saruman's army, so he leads his people toward Helm's Deep, an ancient fortress built to withstand siege. Aragorn disagrees with parts of the strategy, but the movement to the fortress begins because there is no time left for perfect choices. The journey there is heavy with fear. This is not a triumphal march. It is an evacuation of ordinary people who know war is closing around them. Along the way, Aragorn and Eowyn grow closer. Eowyn is Theoden's niece, and she sees in Aragorn the strength and sadness of someone carrying a destiny he did not ask for. But Aragorn's heart is already bound elsewhere, and the story never lets that truth get easy. Eowyn represents the pain of loving someone in the middle of war, when there may be no room for tenderness to survive. At Helm's Deep, the defenders prepare for an assault they know may kill them all. The walls are strong, but the army marching toward them is enormous. The defenders include old men and frightened boys who have never seen battle before. That detail matters. This is not a legendary host of champions. It is a desperate stand by people who have nowhere left to run. The night of the battle is one of the most intense stretches in the entire trilogy. Rain pours down, nerves strain, and every face on the wall is lit by the knowledge that the enemy is coming. When the assault begins, it comes like a tidal wave. Ladders rise, siege weapons strike, arrows fall, and the fortress becomes a machine of desperation. Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Theoden, and the defenders fight inch by inch, buying time with blood. One of the most important emotional turns inside the battle is that courage spreads. People who look terrified become brave simply because there is no other choice left. Helm's Deep is not only about military defense, it is about ordinary fear being forced into action. Even Gimli and Legolas, whose rivalry brings humor to the darkest moments, help show that friendship can stay alive inside slaughter. Then the wall is breached. Saruman's forces blast open a section of the fortress and the defense starts collapsing. The people fall back into the inner keep and the sense of doom becomes total. This is the point where every heroic story usually offers a quick answer. The Two Towers does not. It lets the defenders sink into full hopelessness first. At dawn, with the fortress almost lost, Aragorn convinces Theoden that they cannot simply wait for death behind stone. They ride out together in one final charge. It is a desperate act, almost a refusal to die crouching. And in that moment, as the sun rises, Gandalf returns exactly when he promised he would, bringing reinforcements. The tide turns. Saruman's army is broken between the charge from the fortress and the force descending from the hill. Helm's Deep is saved, but only barely, and the victory feels earned because it was never guaranteed. While that battle is raging, Merry and Pippin achieve something equally important in a very different way. They persuade Treebeard to see the destruction Saruman has unleashed on the forests. Once the Ents finally decide to move, their wrath feels ancient and unstoppable. They march on Isengard, tear down its defenses, flood its fires, and break the machinery Saruman built to devour the natural world. It is one of the great satisfactions of the film. The patient world itself rises against industrial ruin. As the separate storylines begin to close in on one another, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum continue toward Mordor. Gollum, wounded by Frodo's brief kindness and enraged by Sam's constant suspicion, begins slipping back toward his darkest self. The part of him that wanted redemption cannot survive the pressure. In one of the most unsettling turns in the film, he chooses the ring over any possibility of becoming whole again. He leads the hobbits onward, but now with betrayal growing in his mind. The movie ends not with complete victory, but with the sense that every battle won has only opened the door to something even worse. Rohan survives, Isengard falls, and alliances hold together a little longer, but Sauron's full power still waits in the east. Frodo and Sam are closer to Mordor than ever, and that is not comforting. It means the burden is becoming more dangerous with every step. The Two Towers works because it lives in the middle of the story where triumph is never complete and despair is never final. It is about endurance more than achievement. No one reaches safety. No one finishes the mission. What they do instead is refuse to stop. It is also a story about corruption taking different forms. Saruman becomes obsessed with domination through order and machinery. Theoden nearly loses himself to despair. Gollum becomes the living image of what obsession does over time. Even Frodo begins to show how the ring isolates the heart before it destroys the body. Against all of that, the film keeps offering one answer over and over: loyalty. Sam stays beside Frodo. Aragorn stays beside Theoden. Merry and Pippin stay brave enough to matter where no one expects them to. So the Two Towers ends with night giving way to one hard-won dawn, but not to peace. The world is still burning, the ring is still moving toward its final trial, and every character now understands the same thing. Winning one battle does not end the war. It only proves that the war is worth fighting.